Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening. And we've got Larry on his mountaintop with his spy glasses. What's going on there, Larry, down there? How's your weather?
Well, it's still even more bizarre because now that we've got through with our system of storms, they're saying the weather pattern is stuck in place, and we're about to go into storms starting Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday and into next week. So I'm wondering, Stewart, this is tomorrow's June the 1st.
Yes.
What are they going to plant?
They aren't. We're heading into the. I'm wondering. I can't say for sure, but if you parallel Joseph, and remember his brothers went down because of the drought and everything, and the famine that was in the land, so they go down to Egypt. And remember, they didn't know who Joseph was right away. Well, he finally tells them who he is, and he warned them that there was going to be 2 years of partial harvest and then 5 years of no harvest at all. And I'm wondering if we're not seeing a parallel right now, because this is going to devastate the southern crops. But I think a lot of things that people are not thinking about, not only are we having severe crop losses, but farmers are being just destroyed. So they're not going to be planting this year, they're not going to be planting next year or the year after. Many of these people have no flood insurance. I was talking to a reinsurer lady the other day, and a lot of these people are not covered by any insurance. Well, how do they recover? I mean, if you lose $1 million farm and you got no flood insurance, which a lot of these people don't, because this is very, very unusual, they're out. So there's going to be massive bankruptcies filed, and all. This is going to have ramifications in a lot of areas. But the thing I wanted to mention, and there's a report out, and we might as well get into it a little bit. Got a lot of stuff, going to kind of wander around here tonight, but here's the headline. A slow-motion disaster unfolds in the Midwest. FEMA prepares for shaken fury as a 7.7 magnitude earthquake ripping America apart at the New Madrid fault zone. Now, when you look at all the rivers and all the flooding, think of the water weight and what that actually does. It's no different than when ice melts. They notice almost immediate when the ice is gone, like down in Antarctica or the Arctic tundra. When all of the ice melts, the land rises because of the massive weight that the ice had on the land. Well, all this water weight could trigger a massive earthquake, and it's just kind of curious to me. Why is FEMA doing this exercise now along the New Madrid? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really interesting scenario. I think we're seeing, and matter of fact, they're saying other locations on the planet right now are getting snow like crazy, and it doesn't seem like anything is normal at all anymore, not even a little bit.
No, we are heading in now to massive, and I do mean massive. Everyone listening, you're going to have to prepare for this, even if you don't believe it. All you got to do is go around the world and collect weather reports and stuff like that, or whether, where they've actually had massive snowstorms into deserts, stuff like this. It's just massive flooding all over the world, here and there and everywhere. Everything is changing exactly as the bots, Cliff High's bots, said they were going to. In fact, we're watching actually a fulfillment of it all. And Gordon Michael Scallion, kind of a New Age guy, but he developed some maps of what he was shown spiritual. He's a spiritualist, I guess. I don't know what you want to call those kind of folks. But he made a map of the world, actually, and a specific one of the United States, and how a huge inland, basically almost an inland sea, forms starting down in the Louisiana area all the way up through the Great Lakes. And then there's the Navy maps where the Navy predicted that parts of Minnesota would go down and parts of Wisconsin would go down. We're heading into something, and you had a book you just told me about, which probably plays right into this earthquake, flooding, weather changes, erratic stuff. What's that about?
Well, it's ironic.
On an inbound.
Really, yeah, it's ironic because we've been talking about Standell's reports that the Earth is slowing down, the spin is slowing, and at the same time we see the red spot unraveling, and apparently there's a slowing going on Jupiter. And there's a new book I just picked up the other day by Matthew Mather, just to check it out, and it's called Nomad. And in this book, I've only got into it a little bit checking it out, but it appears what's happening is what he's actually writing in fiction about, an interloper, a nomad, a lone, what appears to be, I guess, a brown dwarf star that's shrunken, but has tremendous gravity and weight. It comes from behind the sun, and it's not spotted till actually it gets by the sun. But before it gets where you can really see it, it's already affecting the planets, and as a matter of fact, oddly enough, it writes in there that this nomad begins affecting the spin and the motion and the cycle of the planet itself, pulling them out of their orbits. So it's really odd that would come out now.
Well, I think what they're doing, it's kind of like the UFO thing, and I want to really get into that because we have an arrival coming fairly rapidly now, and it's all connected together. It's all part of, actually, literally, or whether you want to believe it or not, it's part of Psalm 2 and the war. This whole war is against God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost. That's what this whole thing is orientated toward. Doesn't look like that at all. Looks just like, oh, well, Earth events are happening and this and that. There's a reason for all. And now I want to read a little bit from this report that I quoted from the headline. According to this May 31st story over at the USA Today, what they're calling a stuck weather pattern, and you just said next week, pretty much the same thing, has resulted in over a month of stormy weather mayhem all across the center of the country, one that's fueled by hundreds of tornadoes, boatloads of rain and flooding, and all of this following months and months of winter weather carnage across much of the same region. So anyway, they call it a slow motion disaster. My point is this weather warfare? It seems to be orientated to the croplands of the United States, where the main big croplands are. So it does just make you wonder. And, of course, I believe we're under judgment. It doesn't matter if the rich men of the earth are actually the ones doing it, because God is allowing it. And if he's allowing it, then it's a judgment from him. It doesn't matter who does it. I know a lot of people say, well, so-and-so does it. And, Russia could attack America. Well, is Russia attacking America? No, it really isn't. It's deep global state attacking America using Russia to do it. It's all part of Psalm 2 and the Psalm 2 wars. And on we could go with that one. But I wanted to just touch on that one because I thought it was important. Here's another headline, and what do you think about this one, Larry? Report, armed cartel members threaten border wall construction crew. And yet we have no problems on the border, I guess. What do you think about that one? He says the president of We Build the War Project claims 15 armed cartel members wearing camouflage uniforms approached the border wall near El Paso and threatened them, the crews that were working on the project. So what do you think about that one?
Well, that's another reason that, and I'm a proponent of securing our southern border, but that's another reason I think we need heavily armed U.S. military troops on this border to secure this border and protect the citizenry in this country.
Yeah, and I don't think they're ever going to do it. Here's another headline, kind of along the same lines, but not. DHS flying illegal aliens to U.S. cities and then releasing them into the communities. Now, folks, this has been going on for a long time, hundreds of thousands. The report by Associated Press states that aside from DHS releasing nearly 200,000 border crosses and illegal aliens into our 4 American communities since December of 2018, the agency is flying border crosses and illegal aliens into the U.S. cities, and then they just release them. Now, almost all of these people have credit cards. They get housing. They get all kinds of perks that you and I don't get. In fact, I was reading an article, and it really makes you kind of sick to your stomach, because while we're giving transportation, housing, free medical, all of this to illegals who have no business being here whatever, and our veterans are homeless, starving, and sick and can't get help. Now that just goes to show you how sick America is and how sick our government is. And then you wonder why Jesus Christ is not going to destroy the United States. He says he's going to destroy it. And all of this kind of adds into it. But isn't that amazing, Larry? I mean, and we know the UN has been doing this for a long, long time, because there are witnesses who've gone to these UN meetings. And these people have been scattered all around the United States for one purpose. It's a fifth column military operation. And I know all people just laugh and mock and say that's not true. You just wait, folks. You're going to find out how true it really was. But by then, it's too late. The American people sat back and allowed their government to do this. The American people can rise up tomorrow morning and put an end to all of this. They won't. And deep state and global deep state doesn't need to worry about the people of the world. What they need to worry about is the Lord Jesus Christ, whom they think is a big joke. They're going to find out it's no joke at all. I don't know what to tell these people. I really don't, Larry. I'm at a loss for words. You cannot convince a person against their will, because they'll be of the same opinion still. And that old poem has been around for a long, long time, and it's true. These people don't want to know. They don't care. They have their little heartless, cold agenda. And the Democrats, communist Democrats in Washington, are destroying our nation, and people are cheering them on. I don't understand the rationale behind it. I don't understand why people are that blind, unless it's the mystery of iniquity, and God is deliberately blinding the minds of the American people so that when his judgment falls, there's no way out. That's the only explanation I have for all of this. What do you think? I don't know.
Well, Stewart, it's kind of ironic that suddenly I found myself having to move when I had not planned to move, and it's like I'm in a boat, and I'm in the middle of a flood, and the water's carrying me places I may not even feel like I want to go, but that may be the only way out. And so I've been thinking about this, Stewart, and praying as I'm moving, and we're doing some painting and fixing and moved a few things, and I've got to build a fence quickly, and I got a lot of work to do, but, I was thinking that could it be that we've got a nation of such apostate people that, when you said a while ago, if everybody get out tomorrow, they could put an end to this, but then that would mean they would all have to get up together at the same time. And I think we're both. Nobody's going to get up. And so what I'm wondering, Stewart, if you said that Jesus Christ appeared to be a threat, and I'm wondering if possibly those that have an ear to hear are either in secure places and have to hunker down there, or people like me needs to get out of the way of what's coming and get into a secure place, not necessarily secure physically, but a spiritual and a physical location that's sheltered by the Lord. And so what I'm telling people is I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing right at this moment, and that is moving. I'm in the process of that. So I would tell other people if, because of a lot of these states going insane and trying to disarm the general public completely, some people may have to move to states that have a little common sense, and you can still defend yourself, your family, and your homes.
Yeah, well, the Democrats, we shouldn't even call them Democrats. We need to start calling them communists, because that's what they are. And they are involved in a communist overthrow of the United States government. And they've been doing it for a long, long time. I call it slow treason, because you can't bring in a new world order without getting rid of the Constitution. The only way you can get rid of the Constitution is to slow treason. Here a little, there a little. It's like you were just talking about arms. They're trying to take away the guns. If the American people are so stupid they give up their guns, they deserve the tyranny and death camps and torture camps that are going to come. As soon as they give those guns up, it'll be over. And but people, they never learn from history. They don't learn from Stalin. They don't learn from Mao, Pol Pot, and all these other dictators. They start with gun registration, then they go and confiscate or kill the people that had the guns. Either way, it doesn't matter. And they do this. I was amazed that England gave up their guns, and then Australia gave up their guns, and the crime rates went through the roof, because criminals, by their very definition, do not pay any attention to the law. So any law that any Democrat or Republican wants to get under for gun control, he's a liar, absolute liar, because no law is going to affect the criminal who disobeys all the laws. That's why he's a criminal. That's why he's called a criminal. So I don't understand, other than they have an agenda. Disarm the American people so the killing of the American people can begin, and there won't be a backlash from it. And I fear that we have already gutted the Constitution, and the Second Amendment is really under attack. But it says, in order to maintain a free state, not there to go hunting. You can go hunting, obviously. It's not there really even for self-defense, although that's an obvious thing you would do with it. It's there to protect the country. The citizens can rise up and put down a tyrannical, evil government. Like I said before, deep state doesn't have to worry about it, because the American people have shut their eyes, and I don't think they even care one way or the other. And now we've got probably half of the Americans that would be more than willing to give up their guns. They don't see any need for them. The pansies, the wusses. I don't know. Maybe it's time for a big civil war and a cleanup. Who knows? A lot of people are going to die. I know that much because the Bible says so. Lots of blood is going to flow in America. Now, as to who starts it, who knows? Is it Fifth Column? Is it our own CIA and their machine, whatever they do, like they do in all other countries? People don't begin to realize that the CIA has been involved for years in the overthrowing of governments. And And who was it? Wesley Clark came home after he was NATO commander, and he was shown they were going to overthrow, I think it was 5 or 6 governments. Well, what makes people think they wouldn't overthrow our own government? You know, what goes around comes around. But they don't have to worry about it. I'll say it again. Deep state has nothing to worry about for the American people. They're not going to do anything. Their wusses, TSA, I think, proves it. I really believe TSA proves it. When the TSA began to threaten body cavity searches of our women and our men, and they still insist on flying, there's something really, really sick going on in the American people, let alone the government. That they would allow their women vaginal searches just to fly on an airplane? Something really gone wrong. And I think what TSA is kind of like what the Third Reich used to do. They desensitize you. They encroach upon your person. And they're waiting to see if there's any resistance. Well, there isn't. So why shouldn't the government do all this? If the people are acquiescing to it, there's no end to what the government is going to do to the people. So anyway, here's a headline I want you to think about. Mystery as volcano-like underwater anomaly spotted off the U.S. East Coast. This one is weird. I just found it. A YouTuber who shared the mind-boggling findings said he was inspired by the discovery of a new submarine volcano off the coast of Africa last week, which he believed to be behind a series of mysterious low-frequency quakes near the French island of Mayotte, located in Mozambique and Madagascar. Okay, so then he goes on. He said there was a round feature underwater that appears to be almost the size of, it's New Jersey, yes. I've shared a video showing what appears to be a massive black object several miles off the coast of New Jersey. It appears to be a volcano. But he says, I don't know what it is. Right now, I just call it the East Coast Underwater Anomaly. I don't know what we've got going on. It could be, for all I know, a digital artifact, but it really doesn't look like one when you look at the picture. It appears there is a depth change. Reminds me of a string of volcanoes that are 2 miles long and wide, very similar to what they discovered off the coast of Africa. What do you think of that one? And look at how close it is to the East Coast.
Yeah, what's interesting also, Stewart, on Quail Alert today, or yesterday, there was a really interesting report talking about an ancient structure of some type, possible rock, discovered under the ice of East and West Antarctica, and it controls the flow of ocean water under the Ross ice shelf and may affect melting. And so there's another anomaly, a structure of some kind that they've seen under deep under the ice under Antarctica. Isn't that odd?
I think they're going to find all kinds of stuff, and I've long thought that all of the Greenland, Iceland, and Antarctica, they're finding out that it's heat from below that's melting the ice caps. I believe that the Bible really teaches that what is the final I guess you could call it ELE, extinction level event, is really volcanic, and it comes from the pole shift, a total crustal pole shift. And this thing off, if this is a volcano and it decided to go off and it's 2 miles big, that's a huge volcano. if that thing should suddenly just decide to go off, what would that do to part of that East Coast? Maybe that's how New York goes underwater and the rest of these things. Who knows? What do you think?
Well, Stewart, that does remind me of, you remember the guy from Louisiana that I met with that had the dream about refugees everywhere going across America, and he never knew what caused it, but people were homeless everywhere going inland. And so you may be exactly right. You know, he never knew what caused the refugee situation. He thought maybe it's something on the West Coast and maybe the East Coast, but, you know, I guess you could say some earth change events like you're talking about, something that massive go off under the East Coast, you know, the Atlantic would inundate the coastal regions. Matter of fact, boy, would that take out a lot of Democrats.
Well, I've always thought maybe they'd take care of Washington with a heat wave, like several million degrees, but you never know. I mean, the Lord's got all this stuff ready to go, and it just seems odd, the timing of it. And remember all the gases that they were smelling in that area, the sulfur gases, and they couldn't figure out where it was all coming from?
Yeah.
That was, 2 years ago they had that happen? And nobody knew where all those gases were. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that, and Stan Deo tried to track some of that, especially off the coast and around New York City and you know, off the East Coast, but they thought it was possible methane escaping deep under the ocean, and maybe that's part of that system, that volcano system.
Yeah, it's making me begin to wonder. Okay, covert intel. Maybe you can fill us in. Then I want to get into the UFO stuff. There has been an incident in the Gulf of Oman. Do you have any more news on that? About what's going on?
Yeah, this is from Hal Turner, and of course the Pentagon says this is all baloney. Nothing happened, and there was no incident. But ironically, if you noticed my blog today, I posted a billboard in Iran where they are showing the attack on our the U.S. and Israeli ships in that region of the world and the sinking of them. You know, you can see it clearly on the image there. And so, ironically, the covert intel, if true, it basically is an incident that happened in the Gulf of Oman. The USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group on station in the Gulf of Oman. As a matter of fact, it reports that because of tensions, they've stayed in that region rather than get closer to Iran. But it appears, if this is true, now I'm just saying, everybody's saying it's not, but if it's true, and a lot of his data is, it proved later, it says that tensions in the area are running high. Several IRGC, that's Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, scuba divers approaching strike group underwater, and were engaged with Navy divers underwater. Some IRGC divers are now dead. Vessels of the IRGC have taken up positions about 5 miles from the strike group's location, and, of course, the Pentagon is denying this is even happening. So there you go, Stewart.
Well, usually when the government tells you something, the reverse is true. I don't know why that is. I guess it's because they lie so much, and so nobody knows what the truth is. But, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt if it was made up. I wouldn't doubt who did it. You know, we do stuff ourselves and blame it on somebody else. That's a time-honored thing. And anyway, I want to get to this UFO thing because of what's going on. I want to read what I put on the blog, actually. You may have noticed a slow leaking of UFO encounters by the military to mainstream media of late. The military has not only known all about these so-called aliens for a long time, they're deeply involved with them. And it's all part of the strong delusion, a fake arrival that is real in every sense, but with a sinister purpose behind it. Project Bluebeam projections, along with actual advanced anti-gravity craft, will arrive from the heavens, probably to save humanity from itself, and thus we will join the galactic community of star people. Native American accounts of star people are nationwide, something even the X-Files picked up on. They had a number of them where the Native Americans were involved in the UFO landings, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now I wanted to read, and Larry, jump in anytime. Thessalonians. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned, who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Now, who's coming? That's an arrival, folks. We're going to have an arrival. It's working of Satan, and it's going to be with all power and signs and lying wonders. Revelation 12, 7 through 10. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against a dragon, and the dragon fought with his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Well, that has to be an arrival. It's going to look like they come down from the heavens, and his angels are going to be cast down with him. That's the fallen ones that are going to come back. Okay, then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation. So they're tying together the taking of the church out of here at the same time the devil and Satan is cast down to the earth. They arrive, the church goes up. Then Daniel, chapter 2, 42 through 44, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. This is all about the New World Order, basically. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves together with the seed of men, and they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Now, Stan Dale did a remarkable work on interpreting Daniel. He went into the ancient language, and this arrival is not going to be fun. I don't know if any of you, did you ever watch District 9? The movie?
I saw that. Yeah.
It's going to be probably like that, only these people are going to be everywhere, not just confined. It's going to be ugly. Okay, now you remember Mike Milley, the general, when he gave a speech up at Norwich University in Vermont and told the people that they're going to be fighting aliens? And he wasn't referring to illegals either. Remember that?
Well, I remember that, and remember Milley, isn't that the one Rothman is kind of taken with and doing some Torah codes on his upcoming,
yes.
I guess he's going to be chief of staff.
Yeah, I wonder if Barry could run a code on Miley and find out, or Milley, I don't know how they pronounce it, and find out if there's a UFO connection. I think there is. He seemed to know a lot about it because he was warning his future soldiers about that. So anyway,
well, it's odd. It's odd.
Yeah,
it's odd, Stewart. That it's really odd that Milley, I think is how you pronounce it, is coming in about the time that Trump is announcing a space force, a U.S.
Yes.
space force.
Yep. I think they know something's coming. In fact, I have some NASA pictures where you see a UFO being shot at by some sort of a rail gun or something like that. It avoids it, but it leaves at hypersonic speeds. Anyway, The Native Americans, I got something here on them too. But folks, you really need to know what this UFO, so-called enigma, really is. And go to Angel Fall 923. That's my YouTube channel, Angel Fall 923. And when you get there, you'll find all three UFO Gateway to Hell videos on there. And it is a gateway to hell. This is what this is all about. It's a big deception. It is a strong delusion. It's an arrival. And people opt for that because they didn't believe in creation. They believed in evolution because everybody's taught that evolution is the truth. Evolution can't be true. There are two immutable laws that everybody knows that they ignore. One is called the second law of thermodynamics. The other one is the law of homogenesis, both of which refute evolution totally. It's not evolution. It's wide-ranging adaptation that the Lord put within family species. When they reach the limit of their ability to adapt, we have a die-off. What do we got right now? A huge, huge die-off all over the world because everything is reaching the limits of its ability to adapt to its environment. And that's what's going on. Anyway, Larry, here's a headline. Alien artifact. We no longer need to ask for disclosure when religion and science is giving us the confirmations. Isn't that kind of an interesting headline?
Absolutely.
So they say in this, one of the biggest buzzwords at this gathering they had was soft disclosure, where discoveries from NASA and official positions of the Vatican indicate the world is slowly being prepared for full disclosure of extraterrestrials. Okay? Now, why are we seeing on mainstream media all of these UFO things from the military of all people? What are they doing? What's your take on that, Larry? My take is simple. It's part of the NSA Acclimation Project. They're acclimating everyone, just like this person said, to the arrival, which to me means the arrival has to be very close because they're unplugging it at this point. What do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Stewart. It is disclosure because you and I both know that a lot of this military intelligence on UFOs was so secret and so hidden, only black projects could operate in most of it, and they wouldn't give you anything. Matter of fact, people died.
Yes,
you know,
they were killed.
Trying to give information. So if you're receiving information held by the government, like this military exposés we're beginning to see on the internet especially, you know that they're giving it to you to soften you up for what's coming.
Yeah. I'm convinced that this is part of the National Security Agency's Acclimation Project. A lot of people don't realize that that's what's going on. Let me read you from Noise from Phoenix Rising. Now, a lot of people get mad when I read this kind of stuff. Well, she's a Native American. She couldn't know anything, and this is all of the occult. It's all satanic, blah, blah, blah. Well, then plug your ears because I'm going to read part of it. Here's what she has to say. People's going to see stuff they no believe before. People going to see new beings. Beings going to come more, much more. They come from there. She points to the sky. No, Mary Summer says, you mean the alien beings, the UFOs? She nods. Beings going to show more and more. They no gonna hide, play games. It be time they show they be really here all along. So then she questions what's going on, and this is what Noise says. What's the matter? Don't you agree that it would be a good thing for people to see all this? Maybe, she says, maybe not. It'd be good when people's believe because they're going to see with their own eyes. They're going to have to believe. It not be good when people's going to question state about stuff state already knew about for a long time. They're going to be plenty angry at the state. They're going to want to know why state hides stuff from the people. They're going to make people no trust state. And then she says, I'm not done here. Mary interrupts her, and she says, I'm not done here. People's going to question church now. How about what church say about spirits? How about what church say about first man, first woman? Summer, that no stand up now. People are going to be much angry at church too even. That alone tells you what the UFO enigma is all about. It's the final nail in the coffin of Thessalonians and the arrival. You didn't believe what the Bible said? You're going to believe this. In fact, you're not going to be able to escape not believing it. This is the end of Psalm 2 war. It's the arrival. That's what it's all about. It's the big, strong delusion. And the word strong means effectual. It does the job God wanted it to work. What did he say he wanted it to work for? For the damnation of virtually the human race, because they refused to do what Jesus Christ ordered and commanded them to do. I get into that in the book on frequency. People really need to get it. This is serious. This is more serious than anything in your entire life. More serious than anything in your entire life. And you better get it right, because if you pass on and you got it wrong, there is no redo. There is no redo whatever. Now, another headline, I want to read that whole article. Here's another one, Larry. After 70 years of cover-up, we still don't know what they want with our planet. Well, I can tell you what they want, folks. Read Psalm 2, Kings of the Earth. Plot to take over. See, they've been wanting their new world order, but I've always felt that the real new world order is what Stan Dale found out when he started researching all of that. And it's a mixture. It's a hybrid government. Is that the way you read it, Larry? It's part alien and part human.
That's what it sounds like, because the iron represents the alien and the clay represents the weakness, the humans. But what Stan also did when he researched Daniel was he said what you're saying. He said the arrival is imminent.
Yeah, and they would not be disclosing this unless the tomfoolery and the deception of all this. And, you know, you and I have often wondered, the Bible is very, very clear that the rich men of the earth set up a trap for humanity, and they fall into their own trap. So how would you interpret that? Are they going to stage a Project Bluebeam fake arrival only to have the real one come at the same time and fool?
Well, that could be, and what's so interesting is I've said before, the rich men are really the greatest fools because they are deceived more than everyone else is, because they don't realize that there seems to be a principle involved with the biblical aliens or the biblical Nephilim or the biblical fallen angels, and that is, and I'll say this where people can understand it, they don't play well with others.
That's a good way to put it. No, they don't. This is for keeps, and this is what Stan found out was he was interpreting all this. I didn't have time to get out his book on it, but this is going to be deadly. When this arrival occurs, this is going to be horrific for humanity. Not only here on Earth, but in the afterlife. Because as God says, this is a damnation event. This whole thing is set up to damn the human race because en masse they rejected Jesus Christ. What are we seeing around the world? Basically, a rejection, a total rejection of what Jesus commanded. And like Larry has said, and I've said, I don't know how many times, we get such apostates here. They will embrace these people, these entities, when they arrive. It's going to be very, very difficult to stand against it. In fact, I think that's what Jesus said, that it would be, if it could fool the very elect, it would. And the only reason it can't is because they're protected from the Lord, by the Lord, so that it can't deceive them. But this whole arrival thing is to set up the real new world order, part iron, part clay. And notice how it reads. They don't mingle their seed together. In other words, this is an alien hybrid situation where they've already been mating with Earth women. I don't know how many reports we've had about Earth women being abducted and mated with, and then they come back and they harvest the baby, which is a hybrid. And this is what this is all about. I don't know if you ever watched what was the name of that movie? The Arrival. Remember that, Larry?
Yeah, that one, or the Standeo used to really talk about the movie V. And as a matter of fact, ironically, of course, in V, they actually ate some of the humans,
yes.
And they became dominant. And also, remember the old Twilight Zone?
Yep.
Third Man?
Yeah. I think a lot of these people like Rod Serling really knew what was coming. They knew what was going on, and they tried to portray it and give it to people in movies. It's kind of like Matrix. This business, the movie, I guess that's a trilogy now. I didn't care for the second or third one, but the first Matrix was kind of an interesting concept, and it has a whole lot more truth in it than people realize. And what Neo was told about it, that people don't want to get unplugged. That's what the book on frequency, that's why I wrote it. People really do not want to get unplugged. If you don't get unplugged, you're doomed. You're damned. It's right there in Scripture in black and white. Jesus has told us all this, and I don't know how many different ways, because people think differently, and so he's trying to connect with all those different kind of people that think differently, so that nobody has any excuse whatever about not knowing what the Lord wants. And this headline, what do they want? They want planet Earth. That's what they want. After 70 years of cover-up, we still don't know what they want? Of course we do. Anyway, he says, when I was a very young child, my parents bought me a telescope, and part of my fascination was to look for UFOs. I was 12 years old when I learned about the Betty and Barney Hill case, which was fascinating. That's one of the most famous, isn't it, Larry, as far as I know?
Yeah, that's really one of the classic abduction movies, actually.
Yeah, and, she did a star chart under hypnosis, and they never could find a match. And then some scientist got the bright idea, well, maybe we should look at this from another, in other words, tilt it. So it's look at it from a three-dimensional point of view, and let's rotate that star chart. And when they did, they found a perfect match. And where they said all of the trade stuff was, this is all a setup. Remember when God said, I'll give you a strong delusion, effectual. Everything is lining up for that whole thing. And I know Stephen Hawking, in this article from Dave Hodges, has advised we Earthlings to be extremely wary about answering any signals from aliens when they come calling. And they are going to come calling. And history shows us that when a superior culture encounters an inferior culture, the inferior culture is either destroyed or totally absorbed. From a planetary defense standpoint, it would be far more preferable if we found them before they find us. Why do you suppose the Donald is doing the Space Force now, Larry? Seems odd on the timing.
Well, it's got to be that, and of course we know we've had, matter of fact, Barry Rothman has had some insight into astronauts that have told him a lot of information, and he's got some Torah codes linking in the alien. And remember what he said? The Torah codes warned, said, do not worship alien gods.
That's right. I forgot about that. You're absolutely right. And that's what we're going to do. Because the book of Revelation says we bow down basically and kiss the foot of Satan himself. Humanity bows down to Satan and kisses his foot, basically, is what it is, or licks his feet like a dog. That's basically what, if you do a word study, it means. Now, how could you do that unless you laid out a deception a long before that? And, of course, that's exactly what we're doing. These are our space gods who have come here to check up on humanity. They are going to pose as our creators, and that they created us. And Noah says they're going to come with proof, absolute proof, that that's the case. Now, you call that a delusion. That's a really strong one. And there was a lawyer who wrote an article about the legality of all this, that if the aliens arrived and they could prove that they created us, then we don't have any rights, whatever. They do, legally. So get ready for this, folks, and pray to the Lord. You're not going to be here when that event comes. And because they are pushing this out now, it's even Tucker Carlson's had a number of shows on it. They're pushing it on mainstream media. So it's coming out into the open. And I was under the impression for a long time this was going to happen. The Brookings report said, look, if you guys are out there with your spaceships and whatnot and you find artificial artifacts on Mars or on the moon or whatnot, you better keep them secret, because this will be a shock to our civilization and would destroy religions, and we could have a really bad case on our hands. So I think what they decided to do was just slowly leak this stuff to get people prepared with all their movies, sci-fi movies about the arrival, sci-fi movies like Star Trek, all of these movies and TV series are all part of acclimating humanity, that we are not alone, and that our universe is teeming with life. In fact, a lot of scientists say, well, the universe is so huge, what a waste of space if we're only one here. And yet, for all the searching they've done, they have not found any proof whatever of life anywhere else. Why do you suppose that is? The Bible teaches us that Earth, it may not be cosmic-centric, but it's definitely spiritually centric. This is the final war. This is the final turf battle between Satan and Jesus Christ, and it's taking place right here on this planet. And it's really been heating up for the last 70 years or so. And the final apex is the Armageddon. And like Stan... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention right there where you're talking about where we're at, basically. Another anomaly that's really strange is this, if you remember Luca Scantamburlo of Italy and some other scientists and, some whistleblower astronauts talked about special Apollo missions that were military and not private and never logged, that were secret,
yes.
where they actually found what we called, remember the derelict spacecraft on the moon and photographs of it? Yeah.
Yep.
And then guess what happens recently, Stewart? You have something come by, an anomaly, they call it an interplanetary object that entered our solar system and was whizzing by it, and they took pictures of it, and it looks just exactly like the spacecraft on the moon. And then they said, well, what did they say when they were watching and observing it? They said, this looks like a derelict spacecraft of some type. And then guess what, Stewart? It begins to accelerate.
Yeah. In fact, Cliff High's bots talked about an intruder that comes in, and it's a spacecraft of some type. And in fact, there were scientists who said exactly what you said. They thought this was a space probe of some sort coming close to Earth, but not close enough to arouse suspicion. Folks, you got to understand one thing about all this. When we talk about spiritual warfare, it does take on a physical form. It's very physical. The arrival will be very physical, and you're going to have to get ready for it. You may end up with a gray or some weird entity on your doorstep. This is going to get really, really kind of odd. Things that we have never seen before. The veils are thinning. People are seeing more and more stuff. I was going to read part of this. Indigenous elders share story about the star people that crashed on his reservation. And I'll get into this on the next show a little bit more, because it's very, very important, because the Native Americans have long held that the star people who arrived and showed them many things were going to all come back and see them. And so this is going to get very confusing if you don't believe what the Lord Jesus had to say about all this, because this is a matrix. That's why I wrote Frequency, and we're a little bit delayed on book 2, but it will be out shortly. The Hidden Matrix. All the UFO stuff, all the alien stuff, all the wars, everything is within the matrix. It's designed to divert your attention from getting out of the matrix. And that's why Jesus Christ came here. He came here to give you instructions on how you get out of the matrix. Book of John is probably the best book in the whole Bible to tell you how to get out of the matrix. And then you pick up on the other stuff. Folks, this is all very, very real. And people need to begin to get off their fence and stop thinking about God as some sort of nebulous force out there. He's very personal, and he wants a personal relationship. So if you do what you're told, you'll get one. If you don't, you won't. So I guess that's where it is. Anything left, Larry, before we close?
No, you've covered a pretty good area of stuff. I'll tell you what, the only thing that is shocking is the Trump hate in America.
Oh, yeah.
It seems to be increasing and surging.
This is in a form of spiritual insanity, and it's going to turn on the Christians. It doesn't have to have any logic to it. It doesn't have to have any reason behind it. It's an insane hatred. They just can't stand this guy, and therefore he has to go. And don't be surprised, though, if we lose the 2020 elections, if Trump loses. It would not surprise me at all. It all depends on the Lord, and it depends on how long he wants Trump in office. As long as he wants Trump there, nobody's going to defeat him. If he's done what he's supposed to do, he'll go. And anyway, thanks, everyone, for listening. This UFO thing is extremely, extremely serious. It's going to fool the world. You don't want to be one of the ones that's fooled at all, because this thing is going to be so realistic and so real that you won't be able to stand against it. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you probably on, what is today, Friday? Probably Monday, I'll see, and if something breaks, we'll do it right away. Anyway, good night.